This slide shows that as the molecule progresses from being a new chemical entity to a marketed drug, what are the expectations of the regulatory agencies from the pharmaceutical company? As can be clearly seen, initially the information expected is not very detailed, but as the company progresses towards the phase 3 of the clinical trials, more deeper information about the polymorphism and its implications on the product quality are expected to be shared with the regulatory agencies. Similarly, during the scale-up and post-approval change, whatever changes are carried out in the bulk drug supplier or in the pharmaceutical process should be carried out with a view of what implications it may have on the polymorphism phenomena in the drug substance. Since it is a regulatory expectation and a regulatory concern, there are some guidelines that have been issued for polymorphism. Decision tree number 4 in ICH Q6A guidelines explains about when the acceptance criteria for polymorphism in drug substance and drug product needs to be set. The title of the guidance for industry is specifications, test procedures and acceptance criteria for new drug substances and new drug products, chemical substances Q6A. Decision tree number 4 is related to investigating the need to set acceptance criteria for polymorphism in drug substances and drug products. We shall be looking at this decision tree in more detail. Part 1 of the decision tree number 4 in ICH Q6A guideline is a question answer based decision tree. The company is expected to conduct polymorphic screening of the drug substance and then answer the question, can different polymorphs be formed? If it only exists in one polymorphic form, no further action is required. But if the drug substance can show polymorphism, characterize the forms, for example, using X-ray powder diffraction, differential scanning calorimetry, thermal analysis using PGA, microscopy and spectroscopy, and then go to part 2 of the decision tree. Part 2 starts with the question, do the forms have different properties like solubility, stability, and the melting point? If the answer to this is no, or if the changes are very small, then no further tests or acceptance criteria for drug substance is required. However, if the answer to this is yes, which means that the different polymorphic forms have different properties, then we have to evaluate, is the drug product safety, performance or efficacy affected by the change in the physicochemical properties. If the answer to this is no, then again no further test or acceptance criteria is required for drug substance. But if the answer to this is yes, then the company is expected to set acceptance criteria for polymorph content in the drug substance. Right now we are referring only to the drug substance. You will notice that subsequently there will be a requirement to set acceptance criteria in the drug product as well. After this, we go to the part 3 of the decision tree. In the part 3 of the decision tree, the first question is, does drug product performance testing provide adequate control if the polymorph ratio changes? If the answer to this question is yes, then you are expected to establish acceptance criteria for relevant performance tests. Here we can take the example of the dissolution test. If the dissolution test that is set up for the drug product or the formulation is able to pick up changes in the dissolution profile if the polymorphic form change, Then we will set up acceptance criteria based on the dissolution test. However, if the dissolution test is not discriminatory enough, then we are expected to monitor the polymorphic form during the stability of the drug product or the formulation. So this is a higher expectation which is now coming up. Earlier we were dependent only on the dissolution test for satisfying the questions related to polymorphism. However, if the dissolution test is not discriminatory enough, then we will have to monitor the polymorph during the stability of the performance. Does a change occur which could affect safety or efficacy? This means, does a change in the polymorphic form occur during the stability of the drug product? If the answer to this is no, then there is no need to set acceptance criteria for polymorph change in the drug product. However, if the answer to this is yes, then establish acceptance criteria which are consistent with the safety and or efficacy of the drug product. Here we have observed that initially the requirements are only limited to the drug substance, as was the case in part 2 of the decision tree, where the requirements were restricted to controlling the polymorphic form in the drug substance or the API only. However, later on the expectations rose, and now the regulatory agencies want the polymorphic form either to be controlled through a performance test like dissolution, or if that is not possible, then you have to monitor the polymorphic form in the finished product. This is slightly difficult from an analytical point of view, because in the formulation there are going to be interferences from the excipients that are present in the determination of the polymorphic form. This is the end of the presentation for this topic, which was related to the development and regulatory implications related to polymorphism. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them through the WhatsApp group. Thank you very much.